and welcome to the second part where I'm getting ready to enter the first Age of Sigmar Grand Tournament, the Heat, which is going to be early May, so I've not got long to prepare for it really. It's not like I've been building up for any great length of time. So what I'd set myself the task was of deciding on the army at least, and then getting the core of that army sorted out so that I could be getting models, getting paint in them, and then I can always refine it as we get nearer the time. So I've picked at the moment 3 allegiances. I'm not absolutely dead set on those, but there are 3 that I would be happy to go with, and each one I've constructed a couple of types of armies, but there's one for each of them that I'm leaning towards. So for the next 3 episodes, I'm going to be talking about those 3, the pros and cons of them. So the way I'm looking at it, getting ready for a Grand Tournament, I'm not experienced enough. I've not had enough games. I've not had any 2,000 point games. There is the potential, especially with the way Age of Sigmar is, to forget little rules. That really annoys me when I play it in even smaller games. This is why I sort of create rosters for myself so that I can read through phase by phase what I need to remember. But sometimes you just get caught up in the heat of it and you sort of think, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. And you don't, because you've not read your things. You've discarded it to one side, you're not even using it. So I really need to be disciplined there. But of course, in a tournament, the stress of a tournament, I don't just mean because of pressure, because I want to win, because I'm not likely to win. It's just the different environment and the fast, rapid games. In particular, the first game of each day seems to be, it gives you 2.5 hours to play it. Well, that's quite nice. That's fine. But the other games, so that's 3 games out of the 5 for the weekend, are going to be played with a limit of 1.5 hours. Ooh, that's a bit tight. So, especially in case I get an opponent that takes their time over things, I need to be fairly fast. So I need to decide on a strategy. I need to stick to that strategy. I need an army that's capable of doing it without too much deviation. And what I was thinking of with the particular army that I'm going to talk about here is, I need an army that's capable of capturing and holding objectives. That's how you win it. Doesn't even matter if your army is decimated by the end of the game. Have you scored more victory points? I'm potentially going to be up against some absolute monsters. You know, maybe your likes of Archaon, maybe Nagash, Marathi, these sort of absolute beasts. Have I got anything to concern them? And the other thing is, I'm still not satisfied that I'm familiar enough with enough armies. I intended. I was getting a couple of battle tomes each month, which I have been doing, to read them through, but because I didn't really realise how we even find out about the tournaments until someone told me last week and I've booked the ticket, so I wasn't really gearing up for something specifically, so I've been neglecting my studies, so to speak. But I could help myself in that regard by bringing an army with which other people are unfamiliar. This is generally not easy because, after all, the strongest armies, and although Age of Sigmar I think is a pretty good system, you're always going to get some armies that are a bit stronger than others for a tournament type situation. And people are more likely to be familiar against playing against those armies because more people are likely to play them. But there is one source where you can really make some gains there. So let's have a little look what I'm talking about. Fire and lava may be a bit of a clue. And it's the Legion of Azgorh. This is not a Citadel Miniatures army. This is a Forge World army, which means it will be a lot more expensive to get. But quite a lot of Forge World units, it has to be said, it's almost like there's an arms race between Forge World and Citadel, 2 parts of the Games Workshop group, but different entities within them. And Forge World tend to design these models and then go mad overpowered rules. And such is the case with these guys as well. So what I'm just going to quickly do is just go over their special abilities first of all. So you get a roster, like a Battle Tome PDF, that you can just download for free, of course, because it's on Forge World. There's no bought Battle Tome here. So the battle traits that these guys get are fairly powerful for a start. First of all, the first wound that is allocated to each unit with this battle trait, and all of my army that I'm planning on taking is the Legion of Azgorh, in each shooting phase and each combat phase is negated. So basically, someone's shooting at me, it's like, oh, I've done 3 wounds to you. Actually, it's 2. I'm going to ignore one of them. And the same in the combat phase. So it's like having an extra wound on one of your models in each of those phases. And in each of those phases, not just your turn, but your opponent's turn as well. That's fairly powerful. And if I was looking at it and thinking, oh, well, you pay a hell of a price for these models, then that, might work against it. But I don't think you really do. The other thing in terms of spells, now obviously with something like this, one of the things I always say is what I like most about the modern battle tomes is they get their own spell lore. It's very restricting for wizards, and I like my wizards, if they don't get to choose their extra spell, because it's really limiting then in terms, because some spells you just can't cast in certain situations. The range might not be there, or it just may not be worth doing. So, the bigger the range of spells your wizards have to choose from, the more likely they are to be useful. This doesn't get its own spell lore, so that's a bit of a problem. However, it does get its own special spell, which is the Fireball spell. It's the same Fireball spell you would play if you were playing in the Realm of Fire, actually, but these get it all the time. It's like they bring the Realm of Fire with them. So they get Fireball, which is a casting value of 5. If successfully cast, pick one enemy unit within 18 inches and visible. If it consists of, let's see, if it consists of one model, it suffers 1 mortal wound. If it's between 2 and 9 models, it's D3 mortal wounds. And if it's 10 or more models, it suffers D6 mortal wounds. My army, by the way, when we've gone through this, if you've got units of, say, 10 to 20 models, you're not going to like my army. If it's a proper horde army, you might be able to sustain some of these losses. But if it's, say, between 10 and 20, where you've got just enough to give it some bulk, but it's susceptible to things like D6 mortal wounds flying around, really not going to like this. They have another rule as well, which is going to completely... I've noticed in lists, actually, you don't really see many Nighthaunt lists. And I was sort of... Because I was mulling over, do I play Nighthaunt? That's not going to be one of my 3 that I'm thinking of at the moment. It's a nice army, and I enjoy it. But there's just a few things about it that's not quite strong enough, I think, for tournament play. But they would be royally screwed if they came up against me. Because in the movement phase, if an enemy unit can fly and moves more than 6 inches, roll a die. On a 4+, the enemy unit suffers a mortal wound. On a 6+, it suffers D3 mortal wounds. So you're risking, if you ever move more than 6 inches with a flying unit, taking mortal wounds. It's not guaranteed, but it is risking it. And Nighthaunt do tend to have smaller units because, they tend to be quite expensive. And everything flies. Everything. So that could be quite annoying for them. So those are their battle traits. So looking at the army I've selected here, so you can sort of see there's a fair few units in here. So going through, first of all, now there's a couple of named characters I'll be taking along. Shartor the Executioner is the first one of those. So if we'll have a look at the War Scroll here, he's not got loads of wounds. I'm going to have to be a little bit careful, I suppose. He's like a Bull Centaur type character, big beefy one. And indeed, by having him as the general, I get to take Bull Centaur Renders, which is Bull Centaurs like Dragon Ogre type things, as Battleline. So the Bull Centaurs are also one of my Battleline there. He is quite beefy. He does a fair amount of damage. He's well worth his points, really. Obviously, the slight concern for me will be those 8 wounds. If he's the target of a load of attacks before I can get him stuck in combat, I could be in a bit of trouble. So that's what I want to try and avoid if I can. But at the end of the day, we'll just have to see what happens. Note, there's a particular rule here. It says at the start of your hero phase, you can pick an enemy unit within 8 inches. So I'm treating it as like a shooting attack, but I do it in the hero phase. Don't know why that is. Doesn't matter. It says roll a die. On a 1 or 2, nothing happens. On a 3 to 5, that enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. And on a 6, it suffers D6 mortal wounds. Ouch. As well as the same with the Bull Centaurs, you get to add +1 for charging here, and you get your crushing hooves get to do D3 damage instead of 1 damage if you've charged as well. So it's all pretty good, as well as his normal. I mean, he's got 5 attacks straight away, hitting on 3s, wounded on 3s, -2 rend and 3 damage. That alone sounds very unpleasant. That, get him into combat, especially with another unit to back him up. I'm thinking obviously the Bull Centaurs. But also, if he has an unmodified hit roll for an attack made with his axe that's a 6, the attack inflicts a mortal wound in addition to normal damage. So he can be an absolute beast. If he gets a charge in, total beast. So that's the general. So the next named character is Drazoth, the Ashen. He's a double wizard, so he can cast 2 spells. Uh-oh, you're thinking. So straight away, you know, you've got the spell he comes with and Fireball, you're thinking. But I have got another wizard in here as well at some point. He can fly. He's on like a Lamassu type thing, but I don't think it's quite a Lamassu. But he's also, you know, got some decent thing. He's got a 16-inch ranged attack. Now, actually, his melee attacks are actually fairly decent, so I don't necessarily want to keep him out of combat as well. I want to get him stuck in. So I've sort of put them there. This isn't necessarily how I'd line them up, of course, depends on the situation. But I could easily imagine the 3 bull centaurs, Drazoth and Shartor, all going as one, smashing into a flank or a particular part of the enemy army there. And they could wreak some serious damage. But he does have those shooting attacks, and of course he could still do those in combat as well. They're not going to be amazing. There's no point in having him hang back. I mean, it's like 320 points. I'm not having that for something that's going to hang back, throw some weedy missiles that'll do some damage, but not a massive amount, and a couple of spells. He's going to get stuck in. He is going to get stuck in. He's also quite well defended as well. He's got 13 wounds, and he's got better defences than the general as well. You know, ordinarily you might almost argue make him the general, but of course Shartor brings with it the ability to take the Bull Centaur Rendors as battle line. So I'm taking that. And then the final character I'm choosing is a Demon Smith, who's just a wizard, but he also buffs war machines. But those buffs are not part of his war scroll. They're in the individual war machine ones. So we'll look at those when we get to it. A single wizard, so he gets his particular spell. It's going to be quite important that he's able to use that, because as I say, if Drazoth wants to use the fireball, well, he can't. Yes, you've still got Mystic Shield, and that could be useful. And yes, you've still got Arcane Bolt. But fortunately, he gets one that's got a range of 36 inches. Absolutely ideal. So pick an enemy unit within 36 inches that's visible to them. Until your next hero phase, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by that unit, and that unit cannot run. Ideal for aiming at any unit that my Bull Centaurs and the other characters want to charge at. So this is quite decent as well. He actually is also no slouch when it comes to combat, but in at least the early stages of a fight, he's going to have more important things to do as well. So having a look at the battle line units then, the Bull Centaur renders, sorry. So decent attacks, the sort of thing you expect of some these beefy things. 5 wounds, 4 up save. They also get similar rules to their boss. So unmodified save roll of attack with a melee weapon. On them with they've got a spike shield. So if when they're doing a save, they get a 6, it does a mortal wound against them. But they also get the D3 damage on the hooves when they charge in as well as the same movement, 7-inch movement, and +1 on the charge as well. So I'm hoping, you know, that combination should be able to do some serious damage. It's not hideously frightening. We're not talking Archaon and Varangard frightening here, but nonetheless, it could do a job of getting stuck in. Now, the other main battle line, and it's going to be most unlike the way I normally play, because these guys are shooting. They're pretty good at it. So, the only annoying thing about this unit, I have to say actually, is that the champions are usually better than the normal troops. For this one, they're worse. Because this is the weapon, the shooting weapon that the majority of the unit gets. 16-inch range, 1 attack, 4+ to hit, 4+ to wound, -1 rend, 1 damage. That in itself is not bad, but if they get a 6 to hit, it'll do a mortal wound as well as you carry on with your normal damage. Also, if you didn't move at all, you can re-roll hits of 1. Now, that's actually very, very decent. Unfortunately, the champion doesn't get his fireglaive, his rifle. He gets a pistol, which is the same stats, only 8-inch range, half the range. And the problem is, like, it's not like you can just say, I won't have a champion then. They get no bonus, the champion, at all. They just get... Their melee weapon's better, but I don't want them in melee. They might end up in close combat, but I don't want them there. It's really annoying, that. That's so annoying. Obviously, the first turn, they are likely to have to move forward. Obviously, only 4-inch movement. I mean, they're basically dwarfs at the end of the day. They're chaos dwarfs. So, a little bit stumpy. I mean, I don't know how soon they'd be able to actually start firing those things off. But if they did, these are units of 20 of them as well. So if I can get all 20 in range, and that might take even longer, then they can actually kick out some damage with that firepower. That could be very decent as well. And firing into combats that the more melee-orientated units are doing as well. Now, on to a very special unit, the Kadai Fireborn. These are devastating. I think of them as like the skin wolves in terms of the monsters of chaos. So, 8-inch movement, they can fly, 4 wounds each. I've gone for a big beefy unit of 6 of them. They're 140 for 3, 280 points for 6 of them. So you're talking 24 wounds. You're not taking these out. The other thing is they've got a 5-up save, but it can't be modified. It's a bit like the Night Hunt rule. Their save can't be modified. They don't get anything against mortal wounds or anything like that, so susceptible to that. And of course, a 5-up save, you know, for each individual wound, you're unlikely to save it. But if there's a whole host of them, you've got a decent chance of saving some of them, and they ignore rend. But they can also run and charge. So great shock troops. 8-inch movement, can run and still charge. So that basically means if I decide to do a run and a charge, I've got a potential, well, I've got an average range, never mind potential range, I've got an average range of 19 inches. So if something's 19 inches away from me and I want to charge it, I've got a decent chance of getting that charge off. On average, I would do that. Their attacks, 5 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s. There's no rend, but D3 damage each. So, and the other thing you'll notice, the range of their melee attack is 3 inches. So although these are on fairly sizable bases, the second rank can attack. If I can only get 3 in and the other 3 have to slot in behind them, they can still attack. They've still got the range to do that. And as if all that's not going to do enough damage, and that'll do plenty of damage. Of course, I may lose 1 on the way there, maybe even 2 if I'm against serious firepower, but that's still going to leave 4 in there. I mean, that's still, you know, 20 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s. Depends on their armour in terms of what happens then, but then D3 wounds. At the end of the combat phase, roll a die for each enemy unit within 3 inches of this unit. On a 2+, it suffers a mortal wound. So it's very likely that at the end of the combat phase, they're going to suffer another wound as well. And if I get into combat with a couple of units, and to be honest with you, I wouldn't be afraid of doing that against most units. Just go, yeah, get into a couple. And then that's a couple that's going to take an extra mortal wound as well. So these are super nasty. These are really nasty. Then onto the artillery. So magma cannon I went for. 18-inch range. So to begin with, again, it's not, if I have to go first, it's not like I'm likely to be able to go. Obviously, movement 3 is not great. I can't make a run move. Not that I'd be able to shoot anyway, even if I did. But I do get +1 save against missile weapons. So against missile weapons, I've got a 3-up save. So that's decent. The bonus here, though, although I say 18-inch range, the bonus here, if I'm near the Demon Smith, within 3 inches of the Demon Smith, I get to add 6 inches to the range characteristic of this War Machine. So that would make it 24 inches, which I suppose means if someone deploys right up to the edge of their deployment zone and I deploy directly opposite them right up to mine, I could actually fire in the first turn at them. And the way this works, it's not a normal hitting and wounding. I basically just roll a d6. On a 3+, it suffers however many mortal wounds I roll on the die. So between 3 and 6. If it's got 10 or more models in the unit, then I add +1. So then that's like 2+. So that's an average of 3 or 4 mortal wounds. This thing is just going to throw into that unit. And so that's fairly unpleasant as well. Then what we've got is 3 rocket launchers. These I've noticed I've put a couple at the back there. They've got 36-inch range, so I'm not at all worried about that. They should have the range even back there on certainly when things start to creep forward, as they inevitably will have to get objectives. So what this one does, first of all, the missile attack, each one has 3 attacks, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, -1 rend, D3 damage. So they're 120 points each as well. Within range of the Demon Smith, their bonus is that they get +1 attack. So they'll actually have 4 attacks each, as long as I keep them within 3 inches. You can see why I've sort of crowded them on this setup, and this is similar to what I would want around the Demon Smith. As I say, even though the Demon Smith is not bad in combat, he's not intended for combat, he's intended magic, and he's got a fair old range on his spell. You can see how it's all been designed. They know that you're going to want to keep this thing back and to be nestled in, surrounded by, you know, his war machines. Now, it also says here that the model's Deathstreaker rockets can target enemy units that are not visible to the attacking model. So again, no big deal, the fact that I've got one behind another, that, you know, the blocking line of sight is not an issue. In addition, add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made with it if the target unit has 5 or more models. So with the magma cannon fired at larger units, then I get a bonus there. This one, same sort of thing, but it doesn't have to be that large a unit. That being said, the first target of the attacks of these war machines would not necessarily be units that have got 5 or even 10 or plus models. I'm thinking for these things that, like I said at the start, I could be up against some real monsters. You know, you imagine you're up against something like Nagash or Marathi, or something really powerful. Obviously, Marathi, you're not going to unload everything, even if you're in range, because of course you can only take 3 wounds per turn. But those sorts of things where you just think, I want to kill them. These things could have a bit of a fear factor for them. So that's very much what I'm hoping to do there. And it's most unlike armies I would normally use, because it's a fairly stand back and shoot. In fact, I wouldn't, depending on what's up against me, I wouldn't necessarily even rush forward with the Bull Centaurs and those 2 characters and the Kadai Fireborn. I might sort of creep them forwards a bit. The important thing with those units is not to get charged. Don't run up for and then get yourself charged just to get into combat more quickly. You want to be a bit cagey about it. At the end of the day, if you've got enough firepower, they're going to need to come to you. If you start wasting their units. If in a shooting phase, you know, you're doing 20 wounds worth of damage, which is not unrealistic with all this if it's in range, they're going to have to come to you. They can't put up with that all through the battle, because then they'll not have any objectives sat on. They'll not have enough of an army to sit on it. So there we go. That's what I'm thinking of at the moment. It would be really expensive. I have costed it up, and it's going to cost a bit over £600, which is, you know, double to 50% more expensive than 2,000 points of another army would generally cost you. But that's Forge World for you. The other problem with it, of course, is resin, and I absolutely despise using resin. Whenever I get models made of resin, I just despair. But it's got a tournament, and the key things with a tournament is you need to take a strong army, but also you need to take an army that you're happy to play. Like, there are strong lists that I can imagine for some other armies. I'm thinking, no, but I wouldn't actually like to play that. So that's one of the ones I am seriously considering. I'm only giving myself another 3 weeks to make my mind up before I have to start getting core units. The next one I'm going to be discussing is going to be the Legions of Nagash. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've got any comments, then throw those down below. If you've liked it, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe for further content. Until next time, I'll see you later.